Good morning, girls. Happy Tuesday. All right, September 3rd. All right, the family of Saul. 1 Chronicles 8:29 through 9:1a. Jael, the father of Gibeon, lived in the town of Gibeon. His wife's name was Maacah, and his oldest son was named Abdon. Jael's other sons were Zur, Kish, Baal, Ner, Nadab, Gedor, Ahio, and Zechariah, and Mikloth, who was the father of Shimeam. All of these families lived near each other in Jerusalem. Ner was the father of Kish. Kish was the father of Saul. Saul was the father of Jonathan, Malchishua, Abinadab, and Eshbaal. Jonathan was the father of Meribbaal. Meribbaal was the father of Micah. Micah was the father of Pithon, Melech, Tariah, and Ahaz. Ahaz was the father of Jada. Jada was the father of Alameth, Asmaveth, and Zimri. Zimri was the father of Moza. Moza was the father of Bineah. Bineah was the father of Rephaiah. Rephaiah was the father of Eliasah. Eliasah was the father of Azel. Azel had 6 sons: Azrikam, Bacharu, Ishmael, Shariah, Obadiah, Hanan, and Hanan. All of these were the sons of Azel. Azel's brother, Eshek, had 3 sons. The first was Ulam, the second was Jeush, and the third was Eliphalet. Ulam's sons were all mighty warriors and expert archers. They had many sons and grandsons, 150 in all. All these were descendants of Benjamin. So all Israel was listed in genealogical records in the book of the kings of Israel. We're starting Daniel. I'm excited about this. I love this book. All right, there's a note that says Nebuchadnezzar's activities between 582 and 575 BC are not recorded in the Babylonian records. This may have been due to his madness described in Daniel 4. Nebuchadnezzar would then have written this account around 575 BC, describing events beginning around 583 BC. Nebuchadnezzar's dream about a tree, Daniel 4:1 through 18. King Nebuchadnezzar sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I want you all to know about the miraculous signs and wonders of the Most High God has performed for me. How great are his signs, how powerful are his wonders. His kingdom will last forever, his rule through all generations. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living in my palace in comfort and prosperity. But one night I had a dream that frightened me. I saw visions that terrified me as I lay in my bed. So I issued an order calling in all the wise men of Babylon so they could tell me what my dream meant. When all the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers came in, I told them the dream, but they could not tell me what it meant. At last, Daniel came in before me, and I told him the dream. His name was Belteshazzar, after my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him. I said to him, Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too great for you to solve. Now tell me what my dream means. While I was lying in my bed, this is what I dreamed. I saw a large tree in the middle of the earth. The tree grew very tall and strong, reaching high into the heavens for all the world to see. It had fresh green leaves, and it was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade, and birds nested in its branches. All the world was fed from this tree. Then, as I lay there dreaming, I saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven. The messenger shouted, Cut down the tree and lop off its branches, shake off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Chase the wild animals from its shade and the birds from its branches, but leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze, and surrounded by tender grass. Now let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the wild animals among the plants of the field. For 7 periods of time, let him have the mind of a wild animal instead of the mind of a human. For this has been decreed by the messengers. It is commanded by the holy ones, so that everyone may know that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world. He gives them to anyone he chooses, even the lowliest of people. Belteshazzar, that was the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now tell me what it means, for none of the wise men of my kingdom can do so. But you can tell me, because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Daniel explains the dream, Daniel 4:19 through 27. Upon hearing this, Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, was overcome for a time, frightened by the meaning of the dream. Then the king said to him, Belteshazzar, don't be alarmed by the dream and what it means. Belteshazzar replied, I wish the events foreshadowed in this dream would happen to your enemies, my lord, and not to you. The tree you saw was growing very strong and tall, reaching high into the heavens for all the world to see. It had fresh green leaves and was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade, and birds nested in its branches. That tree, your majesty, is you. For you have grown strong and great. Your greatness reaches up to heaven, and your rule to the ends of the earth. Then you saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave a stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live with the animals of the field for 7 periods of time. This is what the dream means, your majesty, and what the Most High has declared will happen to my lord the king. You will be driven from human society, and you will live in the fields with wild animals. You will eat grass like a cow, and you will be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way, and you will learn that the Most High rules over the kingdom of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. But the stump and the roots of the tree were left in the ground. This means that you will receive your kingdom back again when you have learned that heaven rules. King Nebuchadnezzar, please accept my advice. Stop sinning and do what is right. Break from your wicked past and be merciful to the poor. Perhaps then you will continue to prosper. The dream's fulfillment, Daniel 4:28 through 33. But all of these things did happen to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, he was taking a walk on the flat roof of the palace in Babylon. As he looked across the city, he said, Look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. While these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer the ruler of this kingdom. You will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals, and you will eat grass like a cow. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. That same hour, the judgment was fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society. He ate grass like a cow and was drenched with the dew of heaven. He lived this way until his hair was as long as eagle's feathers and his nails were like birds' claws. Nebuchadnezzar praises God, Daniel 4:34 through 37. After this time had passed, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven. My sanity returned, and I praised and worshipped the Most High and honored the one who lives forever. His rule is everlasting, and his kingdom is eternal. All the people of the earth are nothing compared to him. He does as he pleases among the angels of heaven and among the people of the earth. No one can stop him or say to him, What do you mean by doing these things? When my sanity returned to me, so did my honor and glory and kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored as head of my kingdom, with even greater honor than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and glorify and honor the King of heaven. All his acts are just and true, and he is able to humble the proud. The new temple area, Ezekiel 40:1 through 4. On April 28th, during the 25th year of our captivity, 14 years after the fall of Jerusalem, the Lord took hold of me. In a vision from God, he took me to the land of Israel and set me down on a very high mountain. From there, I could see toward the south what appeared to be a city. As he brought me near, I saw a man whose face shone like bronze, standing beside a gateway entrance. He was holding in his hand a linen measuring cord and a measuring rod. He said to me, Son of man, watch and listen. Pay close attention to everything I show you. You have been brought here so I can show you many things. Then you will return to the people of Israel and tell them everything you have seen. The East Gateway, Ezekiel 45 through 16. I could see a wall completely surrounding the temple area. The man took a measuring rod that was 10.5 feet long and measured the wall, and the wall was 10.5 feet thick and 10.5 feet high. Then he went over to the eastern gateway. He climbed the steps and measured the threshold of the gateway, and it was 10.5 feet from front to back. There were guard alcoves on each side built into the gateway passage. Each of these alcoves was 10.5 feet square, with a distance between them of 8 and 3/4 feet. Along the passage wall, the gateway's inner threshold, which led to the entry room at the inner end of the gateway passage, was 10.5 feet front to back. He also measured the entry room of the gateway. It was 14 feet across with supporting columns, 3.5 feet thick. This entry room was at the inner end of the gateway structure, facing toward the temple. There were 3 guard alcoves on each side of the gateway passage. Each had the same measurements, and the dividing walls separating them were also identical. The man measured the gateway entrance, which was 17.5 feet wide at the opening and 22.75 feet wide in the gateway passage. In the front of each of the guard alcoves was a 21-inch curb. The alcoves themselves were 10.5 feet on each side. Then he measured the entire width of the gateway, measuring the distance between the back walls of the facing guard alcoves, and this distance was 43.75 feet. He measured the dividing walls all along the inside of the gateway up to the entry room of the gateway. This distance was 105 feet. The full length of the gateway passage was 87.5 feet from one end to the other. There were recessed windows that narrow inward through the walls of the guard alcoves and their dividing walls. There were also windows in the entry room. The surface of the dividing walls was decorated with carved palm trees. The outer courtyard, Ezekiel 40:17-19. Then the man brought me through the gateway into the outer courtyard of the temple. The stone pavement ran along the walls of the courtyard, and 30 rooms were built against the walls, opening onto the pavement. This pavement flanked the gates and extended out from the walls in the courtyard, the same distance as the gateway entrance. This was the lower pavement. Then the man measured across the temple's outer courtyard between the outer and inner gateway. The distance was 175 feet. The north gateway, Ezekiel 40:20-23. The man measured the gateway on the north, just like the one on the east. Here, too, there were 3 guard alcoves on each side, with the dividing walls and an entry room. All the measurements matched those of the east gateway. The gateway passage was 87.5 feet long and 43.75 feet wide between the back walls of the facing guard alcoves. The windows in the entry room and the palm tree decorations were identical to those in the east gateway. There were 7 steps leading up to the gateway entrance, and the entry room was at the inner end of the gateway passage. Here on the north side, just as on the east side, there was another gateway leading to the temple's inner courtyard, directly opposite this outer gateway. The distance between the 2 gateways was 175 feet. The south gateway, Ezekiel 40:24-27. Then the man took me around to the south gateway and measured its various parts, and they were exactly the same as in the others. It had windows along the walls as the others did, and there was an entry room where the gateway passage opened into the outer courtyard. And like the others, the gateway passage was 87.5 feet long and 43.75 feet wide between the back walls of the facing guard alcoves. This gateway also had a stairway of 7 steps leading up to it, and an entry room in the inner end, and palm tree decorations along the dividing walls. And here again, directly opposite the outer gateway, was another gateway that led into the inner courtyard. The distance between the 2 gateways was 175 feet. Gateways to the inner courtyard, Ezekiel 40:28-37. Then the man took me to the south gateway leading into the inner courtyard. He measured... Bassy. Sorry. He measured it, and it had the same measurements as the outer gateways. Its guard alcoves, dividing walls, and entry rooms were the same size as those in the others. It also had a window along its walls and in the entry room. And like the others, the gateway passage was 87.5 feet long and 43.75 feet wide. The entry rooms of the gateway leading into the inner courtyard were 14 feet across and 43.75 feet wide. The entry room to the south gateway faced into the outer courtyard. It had palm tree decorations on its columns, and there were 8 steps leading to its entrance. Then he took me to the east gateway leading to the inner courtyard. He measured it, and it had the same measurements as the other gateways. Its guard alcoves, dividing walls, and entry room were the same size as those of the others, and there were windows along the walls and in the entry room. The gateway passage measured 87.5 feet long and 43.5 feet wide. Its entry room faced into the outer courtyard. It had palm tree decorations on its columns, and there were 8 steps leading to its entrance. Then he took me around to the north gateway leading to the inner courtyard. He measured it, and it had the same measurements as the other gateways. The guard alcoves, dividing walls, and entry rooms of this gateway had the same measurements as in the others and the same window arrangements. The gateway passage measured 87.5 feet long and 43.75 feet wide. Its entry room faced into the outer courtyard, and it had palm tree decorations on the columns. There were 8 steps leading to its entrance. And now you know. All right, let me. Okay. We are on day 3 of Good Words from Joe Campo. We are on page 12 on the chapter titled Hidden. Somewhere along I-84, I saw his eyes. I was trying to write a book, this book. It wasn't going so well. Actually, it wasn't going at all. Once every 7 years, the congregation I served grants a 3-month sabbatical for, as the policy states, rest, reflection, and renewal. The difference between a sabbatical and a vacation is you're assumed to be doing something constructive and purposeful with the time. 3 months off to sit in your pajamas every day and watch The View is a vacation. I don't know about that. It'd be the last thing I'd watch for 3 months straight. Or, depending on your perspective, torture. I should have finished the sentence. 3 months away to contemplate the secular world outlook of The View's hosts and write a paper on its impact on Western spirituality. That's a sabbatical, or maybe more focused torture. Anyway, during my final week at work, Linda, my office administrator, insisted on using air quotes to speak of the reflection I would be doing on my sabbatical. So I was feeling under a bit of pressure to have something to show for my time away once I returned from sabbatical. I decided to write a book. It would not be as much fun as my previous sabbatical when I traveled in Europe and Africa and returned to do a slideshow for the congregation, but at least it had the advantage of sounding important. Plus, I couldn't come up with anything else to do with my time. Sabbatical began, and I bought a new computer for the project, figuring it would provide the proper incentive to write. So I set a goal for a number of words I would produce each day. 1 month later, I had produced nothing. Each morning, I headed into my converted bedroom home office and sat down at my desk. One of the essential aspects of writing is how it involves a lot of procrastination. I prefer to call it waiting for inspiration. It's why I like writing. It fits nicely with my ability to distract myself with almost anything. I checked my email, looked at the news, scanned blogs for ideas, and reviewed old fragments of topics I had tucked away over the years. In between, I caught up on baseball scores, scrolled through Facebook, and fiddled with things on my bookshelf. Then it was time for lunch. I spent the afternoons trying to write a first sentence that would be an epic first sentence, the best first sentence ever crafted in the history of literature. Of course, that meant that no first sentence ever materialized, much less any other sentence. The worst was when I glanced up at the wall and saw a book I had previously published displayed in a shadow box. It mocked my pathetic attempts to record a simple thought. I had no thoughts, or at least no coherent ones. I had no words, no sentences, no paragraphs. My brain was constipated. I was consumed by the certainty that no one would like what I wrote, and I was equally sure whatever I might have to say had already been said at least 1,000 times before by people much more adept at saying it. Each day became more depressing than the last, even threatening, since each day gone brought me closer to the end of my sabbatical. I hated my new computer because it reminded me of my futility. I knew how embarrassed I would be when I returned to the office and people would ask, "How's the book?" And I would say, "It's great," because I would pretend like I thought they were talking about the one I was reading, not the one I was writing, or in fact, not writing. Linda's air quotes would become a permanent fixture every time I left the office to work from home. If failure tastes like ashes in the mouth, fear of failure tastes like acid reflux. It burns the tender places in your soul, and even the threat of it is enough to immobilize you. That's when my most earnest friends genuinely prescribe a dose of faith, as in, just give it all up to Jesus, which sounds like they're telling me to take a Rolade. Pharmaceutical Jesus is the antacid, which is supposed to take care of the sour stomach that is your spirit. Presto changeo. Can't turn the page. Only for me, the presto rarely works so miraculously, and the changeo can take an agonizingly long time. I guess it's not really Jesus' fault, though. I prefer to keep my misery close. After a while, it becomes like the annoying friend you keep around just so you can be proud of your patience and suffering. I was stuck, the cheap cologne of anxiety and insecurity rising from me in waves. Barbie and I had planned on breaking up the sabbatical a little with a little vacation time. I'm telling you, there is a difference between the two. We figured we'd do a road trip that would take us from LA to Seattle to see our son, then on to Victoria, British Columbia, followed by a side trip to visit some friends in Spokane. From there, we would head back to the coast and home. 3 days before we were set to leave, Barbie, aware and perhaps weary of the torment I was so generously sharing with her, suggested I just set the writing aside. Take a few good days to forget it before we head out. Clear your mind. You can worry about it when we get back. She made it sound tempting, but the air quotes. Just take the pressure off, she said. You're supposed to be enjoying this, not dreading it. I had forgotten that. A few days into our trip, the death of one of our church members interrupted our vacation. Inga and her husband Jim had welcomed my family into their home when we first arrived in the community and had yet to find a place to live. We stayed with them for 2.5 months, all five of us plus our dog. After that experience, they were still nice to us. We loved them. Inga's doctor gave her a cancer diagnosis just before I began sabbatical, which included the news that she would not last long. I promised, if it came down to it, I would return from whatever I was from wherever I was to conduct her funeral. She also made me promise the service would not be about her, but about Jesus, since it didn't matter to her how she would be remembered. What mattered was that Jesus remembered her, she explained. Therefore, the service was not to be a testimonial to her, but to the power of Christ, who gives everyone new and eternal life and brings us home to the place where we were meant to be. While we were in Seattle, I got the call. I flew back to LA for a couple of days to say goodbye to Inga and share in both the grief of her passing and the joy of her resurrection. At the luncheon following the service, I chatted with Inga's daughter. I have a story to tell you, Carrie said. Beginning around the time her oncologist explained to Mom that she would not survive the cancer, she told me she had begun to see Jesus. To be clear, we are Lutherans. We're sometimes called God's frozen chosen. As a general rule, we don't really get into the more extraordinary aspects of faith expression, though we believe wholeheartedly in the miraculous power of Jesus. It's a cultural thing. For us, standing up when you're supposed to be sitting down is pretty over the top. But if Inga said that she saw Jesus, it was enough for me. How did she describe him? I asked. At the beginning, Mom said Jesus was off in the corner of her room. And Bassie, hold on just a second. Bassie, come here. No harness to hold him. Hold, please. I'll be out as soon as I'm done. Right. At the beginning, Mom said Jesus was off in the corner of her room, and he told her he would never leave her. Every day, she said she saw him coming closer and closer until he stood right in front of her. 3 days before she died, I asked her what he looked like. Carrie paused. I waited. Mom's description reminded me of a book my aunt brought when she came for her final visit a few weeks ago. It included a picture of Jesus drawn by an 8-year-old girl. I found the picture and showed it to her. I asked her if it was Jesus, what Jesus looked like. Maybe she had seen the picture, I suggested. No, Carrie said. The book sat on the coffee table for a few days, but no one ever opened it. When I showed Mom the picture, she said, those are his eyes. She never spoke much more afterwards. Sebastian. All right. I'm going to stop there. All right. This is a good book. He's a good writer. I love his little comedy pieces in the middle. All right. Let me go back. Sebastian Travis York. Shut it. Sorry. We have somebody here looking at our roof to fix our roof. We need a roof repair. Same, Lisa. They're always vegetables. You're so right. Nebuchadnezzar will always be that big vegetable. I can't remember what he was in the book, and I'll always call him. Is it Nebi? King Nebi. They call him Nebi or something in the. It's always different though. Now I can't think of what it is because the dog's barking is distracting me. Please pray for my middle son, Devin. He has been clean from drugs for approximately a year, but is in deep depression, and his wife is very concerned he's going to go back to the addiction. Also worried my youngest, Dylan, is still doing the drugs. They both have children, and it is so heartbreaking. The middle son has attempted suicide, and the youngest has overdosed several times. Please pray that a generational curses and addiction is broken. Yeah, we will pray for that, Karen. So hard. So hard. Our world is, the devil has got a stronghold on so many people. You like my doorbell, Andrea? I have a contractor here. Yeah, I think he was a zucchini too, maybe. Hold on, let's look. Nebuchadnezzar in VeggieTales. They don't know how to spell Nebuchadnezzar. Hold on. Let's see. He looks like, actually, you're right. He is a cucumber. He looks like Mr. Nezzer. Mr. Nezzer. That's what it was. There's Mr. Nezzer. He had the bumps on him. He was, no, I take it back. He is a zucchini. I can't. He's an elderly zucchini. I thought the bumps on him meant he was a cucumber, but nope, sorry, I was wrong. He was a zucchini. You're right, Shelley, because he has a little thing on his head that a cucumber doesn't. Stem. All right, my friends, let's go ahead and pray. God, our Father, we thank you so much for this day, and we thank you for your provision and for your word today and the messages given to us in your word. And I pray you will help us to understand the message you want us to hear, that you will make it clear to us exactly what you want us to get from each day that we read the Bible. I pray that you'll make clear the message you want for our hearts. God, we pray for each and every woman here, and I know the struggles are many. I think of Karen and what her children are going through and the difficulty. There's so many people in this world with family members fighting the same battle of addiction, and not just drugs, but many different addictions, God. But you are the only one that can free us from those strongholds. And I just pray for Karen's sons and all that they're going through. And I just pray that you will give them freedom from the bonds of addiction and make clear to them the changes that need to be made, and bring peace to Karen's heart as she walks through such a difficult time for her kids. God, I pray as we go through our day, just be with each one of us. Help us to make decisions that are honoring to you. Help us to be wise with our food choices, recognizing that our food is a form of worship to you, and that we can make decisions that honor you through our day. And I just pray that you help us to be strong, because the addiction for many of us is very, very strong with food. And I just pray that you will give us freedom from that bondage. Thank you for your love, God. Thank you for your mercy, and thank you for your grace and your peace in your precious name. Amen. All right, my friends. Yes, it's an overgrown. He's an elderly zucchini. All right. Well, I got to go outside and get an estimate to fix my roof. That's something to look forward to. Fun. Oh no, Jennifer. All right. We'll be praying for that too. All right. I love you, girls. Can't go live for breakfast today because I have to go get my teeth cleaned. I'd rather do anything. I'd rather go have a pap smear. I hate the dentist. I like the dentist. She's a nice lady. I just hate it. Like, sometimes when I get in there, I say, can you just do a pap smear instead? Because I don't enjoy this. Not that I enjoy the pap smear. Let's be clear. All right. But I won't be live for breakfast because of that. I hate it. I hate it. I do not like going to the dentist. I find it very uncomfortable. I cannot stand how they have to talk to you. It drives me bonkers. that they have to talk to you. And it's without fail. The dentist has got to carry on a conversation, or the hygienist. They've got to carry on a conversation with you. I have yet to be, this isn't new to me, dentist. I have yet to go to a dentist where they didn't talk to you. Like, just can you please turn on some peaceful music? Let me close my eyes and get this over with. Because, yes, at least I get to keep my clothes on. I mean, honestly, if I had the choice to like just walk from the front to the back of the store through Walmart naked, or go to the dentist, I probably would just risk it and walk through Walmart. All right. Love you guys. I'll see you soon. I hope you have an amazing on-plan day if you're part of Coach